Niçin buralara geldiklerine vakıfız. Petrolümüz için geldiler elbet. O kara altın ki, belasıyla da, nimetiyle de nicedir bu topraklarda. Kara altın ki, devletleri kılar imparatorluk, Adem evladını da canavar. Canavarlar ki, sırf cenk etmekten anlarlar. Bu topraklardan petrol fışkırmaya devam ettikçe, sulh çölde bir serap gibi ırak olacaktır buralarda.
It is February 19th, 1915. Ottoman troops huddle in their bunkers as shells fall around them. The British ships caught them off guard earlier in the morning, and now they are pinned. The bombardment is halted by the end of the week, but the coastal forts have been turned to rubble. This is an ominous warning for the battle to come. The First World War had been raging for quite some time now. The dream of a quick war that would be over by Christmas had been shattered against the harsh reality of trench warfare. The Western Front was beginning to see the horrors of the trenches, as casualties mounted on both sides with little progress being made. The Eastern Front, however, was in complete disarray. The Russians had pushed all the way to the Carpathian Mountains in the southern front, but they were unable to stop the German advance in the north. The Central Powers knew the Entente needed to find a way to reinforce Russia in the east. Austria-Hungary had been pushed to its limit. The only thing preventing a Russian advance was their lack of supplies. But if the Entente was able to send relief and weapons, it could spell the end for the Habsburg dynasty in the Balkans. After the shelling of the Dardanelles coast on February 19th, German and Ottoman generals met in a hurry to discuss the possibility of invasion. So far in the war, the Ottomans had made themselves seem weak and unprepared. The failed offensive in the Caucasus Mountains against the Russian army proved devastating for the Ottoman forces, as many fell to cold and frostbite. The huge amount of casualties depleted the Ottoman forces in the region, leaving it wide open for the Russian armies to march in. The Turks knew they couldn't afford to lose the Dardanelles. It would leave the road to Istanbul wide open and could spell the end for the Ottoman Empire. In preparation for the inevitable conflict, the Turkish Fifth Army was set to prepare the defense of the strait. The Fifth Army originally consisted of only 5 divisions defending the peninsula, but in all, 16 Ottoman divisions would participate in the upcoming battle. The command of the Fifth Army was placed under German General Otto Liman von Sanders, with his Turkish counterpart being one Lieutenant Colonel Mustafa Kemal. When Mustafa Kemal was a young man, he joined the Young Turks, a revolutionary group of intellectuals. He would participate in the Young Turk Revolution of 1908 and would soon after join the army. His baptism of fire came when Italy invaded Libya in the Italo-Turkish War in 1911. After this, he was set to fight on the home front, where he fought in the Balkan Wars in 1912 and 1913 respectively. He made a name for himself as the commander of the 19th Division, where he would rise to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Mustafa Kemal knew the terrain of the Dardanelles from the time he served in the military prior to the First World War. He was the perfect choice to help defend the peninsula from the Entente invaders. Following the attack on February 19th, British minesweepers tried to move into the strait, but they were fought off by the Ottoman artillery. Under enormous pressure to get the attack underway, the British restarted the offensive on March 18th. 18 Allied warships would move into the strait under heavy fire. It seemed the plan was to push all the way to Istanbul, but a mix of Ottoman artillery and undetected mines sunk 3 of the ships and heavily damaged 3 others, forcing the ships to turn around and go home. With the naval attack to be considered a complete failure, British General Ian Hamilton took control of the British and Anzac landing forces. Meanwhile, the Ottoman troops finalized their defenses and prepared for the inevitable. On April 25th, the invasion began. Artillery shells and machine gun fire rained down on the landing crafts, while British ships tried their best to provide cover fire. Despite taking heavy casualties, 2 Allied beachheads had been established by the end of the day. One of these landing sites would be a place known as Cape Helles on the southern tip of the peninsula. The other beachhead was to be established at Gallipoli, which would later be dubbed the Anzac Cove. Entente forces tried to push on, but the Turks held their ground. The fighting devolved into trench warfare as more and more Ottoman reinforcements arrived to hold the peninsula. While the Ottoman command was quite dissatisfied with the way the stalemate was going, the Entente forces were desperate for progress. They needed to show results in order to distract the populace from the stalemate on the Western Front, and so they would launch another landing at Suvla Bay, northwest of Anzac Cove. Due to the diversionary actions at Cape Helles and Gallipoli, the landings at Suvla Bay were almost unopposed, but a lack of Allied communication allowed the Ottomans to reinforce quickly and halt the Entente advance. Gallipoli would quickly turn into a hellhole for both sides. The bodies began to mount in no man's land, and at night the wind would sweep the smell of rotting corpses into the trenches. Eventually, it got so bad that both sides agreed to a small ceasefire to bury the dead. It was quite reminiscent of the Christmas truce that took place on the Western Front only months before. But as the dead were all buried, the rhythm of fire, gunpowder, and death sunk back into the battle. The key objective for the Entente forces lay in the village of Krithia. At first, the British forces tried to push from Cape Helles to Krithia. They made it about halfway before their advance was halted, and the Ottoman counterattack pushed them back. Here, Mustafa Kemal saw an opportunity. He broke through the lines flanking the Anzac Cove. This dashed any hopes the Entente High Command had of an easy unification of the two landing zones. Now, it would have to be won through blood, sweat, and tears. The Ottoman forces had placed their artillery on the high ground of the peninsula. This aided the Turks in their attempts to hold off the Entente forces. However, this didn't stop the Anzacs from trying again to capture the village of Krithia and the artillery batteries on the hill of Achibarba on May 6th. The attack once again failed, and the subsequent Ottoman counterattack would also fail, leading to just more bodies laying in between the battlefield. The Ottoman counterattack would last until early June, when the Ottomans finally halted their foolhardy offensive. This would lead to the last major battle in late June, when the British forces tried one last time to take Krithia. This time, it was a joint operation from Cape Helles and the Anzac Cove. The attack would fail, once again, as a lack of communication and supplies forced them to retreat. And once again, trench warfare would become the norm of the battle on the peninsula. In the final months of the war, Mustafa Kemal would walk up and down the front. He would encourage his troops, order the construction of new defenses, and plan small attacks. This, along with the fact that he was able to accurately predict the enemy's movements and attacks, led to his reputation becoming greatly increased. He became a local hero among the troops, and this would soon spread throughout the empire. The final nail in the coffin for the Entente forces came when Bulgaria entered the war in October. Small amounts of troops had already been taken off the front lines, but with this new threat, the decision was made to evacuate Gallipoli. The final troops would be evacuated in January of 1916, and the Ottomans declared victory. This small but bloody battle had far-reaching effects during and after the war. For the Entente, it brought a somber form of pride for the Anzac forces, who showed incredible bravery during the struggle. But for the Ottomans, it was a different story. Many heroes emerged from the trenches of Gallipoli, chief among them to be Mustafa Kemal. He was a source of pride for the Turks, and the victory would be the source of a massive morale boost for the Ottoman army. After the war, Mustafa Kemal would found the Turkish Republic, which still stands today. The Entente failure at Gallipoli would turn disastrous for the Russian army. Without foreign aid, they would continue to falter for the rest of the war. With this, Gallipoli could be added to the list of reasons for the defeat of Russia and the subsequent revolution. In all, the immediate effect of Gallipoli on the rest of the war was limited, and the bloodshed would continue for years to come. Thank you for watching. Be sure to leave suggestions for future videos in the comments below. If you would like to check my sources, they are listed in the description. Be sure to subscribe and check out any of my other videos if you have not done so. Thank you.